This is Camp Hacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
What if one meaningful insight or one great question could shift how you lead at camp this summer? Welcome to Intentional Leaders from Go Camp Pro, brought to you by the Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic. It's a free tool that'll help you reclaim your time, reignite your purpose in this job, and build your resilience. You can take it at camp.mba/Travis. So each episode on the show, our guest rolls a 20-sided die, or I roll it for them, or Matt rolls it for them. And it sparks some reflection through three specific lenses: memories, insights, and beliefs. My name is Travis Allison, and I help camp directors do all these things so that they can have systems, get more done, and have more time to spend time with the people in their camp life. Today's guest is Gabe Chernov, who is the owner-director at Camp Birch Trail Girls. Welcome, Gabe.
Thanks very much for having me, Travis. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited for this conversation too. You and I have many great camp conversations, and I think this is going to be a fun, different conversation. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm excited to join you, and I think one of these days we'd have to make a podcast of our regular conversations, and that would be
You're totally right. That would be amazing. So for this show, with this format, we borrow this playful format from NPR's Wildcard podcast, with our thanks to Rachel Martin for the inspiration and the style of this. But here's how it works. Each round, we explore memories, insights, or beliefs. In this case, I'm going to roll, and I'll show you on screen the D20 that we roll to determine the question. And Gabe, you get one skip, so you can be like, nope, let's get a different number, and one flip where you can make me answer it, but then you have to answer it. And then we're ready to go.
Got it.
Okay, so I am just going to set this up so that we can see my screen to just prove to everybody that I'm actually rolling a D20. So memories is the first section, and we're doing question 17. Oh, I love this one. This is almost one of my favorite camp questions. Gabe, for you, what was a lesson you learned from a teacher or mentor outside of your family?
A lesson I learned from a teacher or a mentor outside of my family. I'm going to start out first by flipping it to you.
Okay.
Because I want a moment to think of a good answer, and
Sure.
will allow me to do so and not waste our listeners' time.
Yeah. I think the most important thing, and I was lucky enough to have this happen a lot of times before we're recording, you and I were talking about what it was like to grow up nerdy in small town Ontario and really not feel like I had a place to fit in. But for me, and camp was definitely that place, and I think a lot of people are surprised at how much I recall of my camp time, but also the impact it had on me when I went to camp for 6 days a year. And I never went to a 2-week or a 4-week program. And there's all these impacts. So this will always come back to camp. When I was 13 years old, my camp counselor in McLean took me outside of the cabin and sat me down. And he just said to me, "Travis, I think you'd be a great camp counselor." And that, of course, was all I needed. This, a person I looked up to in my favorite place saying, "You will do great here," was amazing. But the lesson for me is the little amount of effort it took for him to do that and what the implications of that are. There is zero chance that you and I would be having this conversation had he not done that in 1984. It's just the ripple goes on. And I've talked about this on other podcasts and in my TED Talk. But when I was putting it on the internet, on the TED.com website, I was like, I better talk to Ian and just make sure that it's okay to tell the story. And he has no recollection.
Wow.
He doesn't remember that moment at all.
So thank you for sharing. I'm glad I used the flip because I have a similar story. And then I your question.
Yeah.
When I was a kid at camp, I remember, and to go back to how old you and I are, I remember when we would have soda at camp, it came in a glass bottle. And I remember my first soda at camp, drinking it completely the wrong way, right? Like my whole mouth over the bottle.
Yeah.
And a counselor teaching me how to drink a soda the right way.
Yeah.
And this person having no clue that I remember this to this day, that I'm telling
Yep.
you the story. And that literally every year at staff training, I tell my entire staff that story. How somebody took what to them was a nothing moment that they'll never remember, but that I've now
Yeah.
told thousands of staff members this story.
Right.
How, like you say, the ripples can impact people.
Yeah.
So it cracks me up that at camp you have this amazing opportunity to do that. So I love that we flipped it, because now I love your answer and mine combining. But here's my answer to question 17 is I was always homesick at camp. I was always just the penultimate homesick camper, which I think helps make me a good camp director, because I can really able with those kids. And I remember after 1 year at camp being really homesick, and so homesick that I was really questioning, should I or should I not go back to camp? And getting a letter from the camp director, not trying to convince me to go back to camp, which you would think the letter would be, but in essence laying out for me how, I was becoming a young adult and becoming a man. And part of that was learning to grow up and make my own decisions, and what type of man did I want to be, and really helping me to make my own choices. And I remember that letter like it was yesterday, and and being so happy that the camp director, who I really respected, didn't say to me, "Babe, here's what you should do," or "You're going to be fine," or "It's going to be okay," but telling me to respect your choices and make whatever decision you want, and kind of teaching me in that moment. And the lesson for me was that as a camp director, we have such an impact on kids, on staff, on parents, and to never take that moment lightly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that stuff. It gives me the shivers every time. It's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Next question. These are also a mix of sort of general questions and camp specific questions. So we look at some obviously that'll be easy to apply to camp, but others just about other things.
Well, I wound up studying really hard for these questions, so
Yep. What's an ordinary place that feels extraordinary to you because of something that happened there?
I would say being outside. And for me, at a certain time in my life, I think I learned or appreciated more just being outside and being able to take in the beauty of nature. And it sounds kind of trite, but being able to take a walk outside, whether it's in the woods or the jungle or the desert, but outside in nature, outside of a city, and take in your surroundings and really be in the moment, and bring in all that entails. So listen to the sounds and take in the sights, and sort of have a sort of a mindful moment taking a walk in nature.
Yep.
And for me, being able to do that has such a calming effect. If I'm working on something and I'm kind of stuck or have a writer's block, just going and taking a walk, it's huge. And it makes me, I think, feel or sound old to be like, gosh, going and taking a walk in nature has a real calming effect. But I love it. It's been a big deal.
Yeah. Is there a particular spot that comes to mind when you start describing those walks?
Yeah, so there's a park that's my office at home. My winter office is probably a mile from my house. And so there's a park. I live in Milwaukee. It's really close to the lake, and Lake Michigan. And this park is on the lake, and it's got a beautiful trail that's right along the lakefront. It's kind of like a nice little cliff. And then there's a part that's in the woods, and you could do the whole lap in 10 minutes, but you spend a mile kind of exposed on the waterfront over a bluff, and then you spend a mile in the woods, and it's great. And a good 10-minute loop in nature that's a mile from your office or a mile from your house. It's a nice place to start the morning.
Yeah. That's totally great. Next one. What was an early moment, a moment that convinced you that a temporary community like camp could have an impact on a child's life?
When I started at camp, I was 7 years old, and I went for 8 weeks, because back then, 8 weeks was the session length. And my first, I want to say it was 4 years. I know it was 3, but I want to say it was 4 years. Same counselor. And he had a deal with the camp director that he would only come back if he could have, the same group of kids. And there's a group of us from that cabin that are still in camping to this day. And that community, right? That feeling of kinship that he provided for our cabin was amazing. Even to this day, right? When we all get together. But the camp itself was amazing. All the counselors were great, but he in particular, his name is Charles. And I think one of the high points for me in my camping career was when his own daughter came to Birch Trail years later. That to me was like the biggest flattery ever. But being that young, being 7 years old, and knowing that that person had created such a safe community for me and my cabin mates, that
Yeah.
stood out to me even at that age. That
Yeah.
was a really powerful thing.
Yeah. And obviously that you get to do it for his daughter too
Yeah,
is,
yeah. That part
yeah.
was like, oh my God, that was amazing.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so great. And before we move on to the next section, Gabe, I just wanted to, for folks that don't know, you don't know much about Birch Trail, how, tell us about what the thing is that you most happen when campers spend their summer at Birch Trail.
So I would say the Birch Trail is a traditional residential camp for girls. We have 4 and 8 week sessions. And our primary focuses are social emotional growth and development. So we're a very intentional camp. Everything happens for a reason. And we have pretty much every activity you can imagine, plus a very big wilderness trips program. So every camper has a wilderness experience again.
Yeah. Give us an example of what you mean by a very intentional camp.
So one of the things that we noticed this past year, and I think was a trailing effect of COVID, was that kids were having some struggles in terms of learning how to express empathy, of how to talk to one another, how to verbalize their feelings. So at Birch Trail, whenever we see an issue, we want to deal with it, and we want to deal with it in a way that the campers are going to resonate with. So we developed a board game for our campers. We had a poster, and I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of it, but I can get one. We developed a poster with all these different values that we feel are important to camp: inspiring growth, active listening, role modeling, problem solving. And then we developed cards. And so the game board had different things that you could do and places you could move. And then, of course, little prizes for them. And then the cards were things, and I happened to have some here because Travis and I were talking about it beforehand, where so this one would be inspiring growth. And on the back, it would say, thank you for encouraging me to keep going. I'm sorry, I can't read backwards. Keep trying and seeing mistakes as you grow. You helped me when blank, and it made a difference. And so we have 10 of these different cards for active listening, for feeling seen, for problem solving, showing support. And the idea of the game is that every camper in the cabin would pick a card that resonated with them that day, and they would work through how that helped them that day. So it's really a way for them to give words to their feelings and talk about verbalizing their feelings and come together as a cabin. And it was great. The kids loved it. The game was a smashing success. So when we see an issue happen in real life, in the real world, we translate it to how can we help our campers work through this? And so that happens in every aspect of camp, every aspect of our programming. Our evening programs are all going to relate to the values and the growth that we want to see in our campers. And the same is true for our trips program and our activities.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see at Birch Trail how deep that goes. And it's just a great thing to watch it happen for your campers as well. Having been there, it's fun for me. Okay, let's go to insights. So we'll do 3 more questions in the insights division. 4. What makes you irrationally defensive?
Rationally defensive. I think sometimes what makes a really good camp director is when you get really upset by a certain type of criticism from a parent, a staff member. And I can remember having conversations with fellow camp directors when you might get a really tough critique or a criticism from a parent, and you take it really personally. And so for me, it's hard to say defensive, but I think it's really hard to not take things personally, because when you're dealing with people's children, you want everything to really matter and not be perfect, but to go really well. And so when you get those critiques, those really harsh ones, it's hard not to really take it so seriously. And so I think those are the ones for me that are really difficult. And I think those are also the ones that make you a good camp director, because it means you really care about your community and what you're doing. So I would say I try really well not to be crazy defensive.
Yeah.
And then there are definitely moments where I 100% am going to fail.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fun. And totally makes sense. Okay, next insight is number 12. What are you most afraid of at this point in your life?
This point in my life, I think which is funny today because I have a cast on my arm. I think at this point in my life, it's health related, right?
Okay. Yep.
Really, I feel really blessed, and I'm not a religious person, but I feel really blessed to have a job I love, a family who I'm crazy about, and I think anything that scares me today is something
Mm.
I can't fix. In camp, we scaffold everything, right? Every part of
Yep.
our program is intentionally designed to help our campers grow, to help them fail and learn from that failure, to help our staff to become better leaders and better people. We spend so much time, so much energy and money working on this process, right? It's like a process by design to help our campers, whether they're succeeding or failing. And we can control so much of it. Of course, there are a few things you can't control, the weather, etc. But so much of camp can be scaffolded to produce the results that we're looking for. So for me, when I'm talking about things that scare me, it's, well, what can't I fix, right?
Yeah.
I have 3 kids. They're wonderful. They're 12, 13, and 14. A typical teenager outburst, I feel great. I can manage that. I can handle that with the best of them.
Yeah.
But I would say health matters. Those are the things that probably scare me the most.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Next question is the 12 again.
This is our only repeat so far is a 12.
That's true. What are the odds? When you think about managing camp, what have you become more careful about in the way that you communicate about camp to families?
One of the things that I've become fairly intentional about is when and how often we're trying to hit parents with different messages.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many of us receive communication from so many different people.
Yep.
And we really want to make sure that our communication to families is important and that it's digested. And so, Travis, one of the things you and I have worked on in the past is putting through messages via video because
Yep.
people weren't reading it. And so, one of the things we've become really intentional of is when do we message? What time of day? What day of the week? What format are we sending it in? How do we know when we're spamming our families, when they're
Mm-hmm.
not reading our messages? Because I want to make sure that what we're sending them actually matters and actually gets through them.
Yeah. It's also really important at that point. Forgive me for going into consultant mode, but for other people listening, I think it's important to think about that. You just said it's the timing of it. Like, well, how can we show up? And it's hard to figure out, but how can we show up exactly when they need the thing that we can send them? But I think that comes with practice and just the acceptance of like, if I don't get it right this year, I can get it right next year.
Yeah. I found that it's to piggyback on what you're saying, it's so
Yeah.
important. I just check in with them, right? I follow up with the family. It's like, was this helpful? If it wasn't, when would it be helpful? What do you need at a certain time? And then the hard part is to know it's not going to be the same answer for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It's true. Great. Well, I appreciate your insights. We're going to move on to beliefs as we bring this in towards the end here. 3 more questions about beliefs. Number 4, big picture. Do you think that there is order to the universe or do you think it's chaos?
Well, I'd like to think that there's order.
Sure.
The part of me, and I always say, and I'm generalizing, that I think in order to be a camp director, you kind of have to be a control freak. It's kind of like the two go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of me, the type A camp director part of Gabe, says, yeah, it has to be order because that makes camp work. And then the realistic part of me says, oh my gosh, it's total chaos.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say I'm of 2 minds on this one.
Fair. Totally fair. 16. What trade-offs are you willing to make to protect yours and your staff's rest and learning and safety at camp?
A number of years ago, we created a rule, changing things for time off to ensure that everybody gets 8 hours of sleep. So
Yeah.
we called it our midnight rule. This was, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. And at the time when we implemented this rule, this was before the whole sleep tracking, everything, just at the beginning of sort of the brain science and the data. When we first implemented this rule, I was wildly unpopular with the staff for
Mhm.
saying, hey, we're shutting down the staff lounge, we're shutting down the lodge, the hangout time, and y'all got to go to bed at midnight. And the reason we did so was to say everybody needs 8 hours of sleep.
Yep.
Because all of really serious, responsible jobs need 8 hours of sleep. And so for a year or two, I think people really didn't like me. And that was okay. but they got more sleep and it was great.
Yeah.
And so I'm not willing to sacrifice my staff's health, them getting proper sleep. We spend a huge chunk of change on food for staff. I think that's important to nourishment. And so in terms of, safety, there's almost no length we won't go to protect their safety. And that goes to things like, having a driver for staff for time off or those kinds of things. But honestly, a lot of it has been about well-being.
Yeah.
Try and have more of a staff wellness program, to do things like having in-camp staff programmers to help them with things in camp, whether it be meditation or a social worker or those kinds of things. And so a lot of that is stuff that we did, honestly, 10 or 15 years ago, to try and work on whether it be staff meditation or staff yoga or different things of that nature. And it's been huge with the staff.
Yeah. Just really focusing on rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Rest.
All the pieces you're describing are all pieces of parts of that. Yeah.
I mean, I think we can all think back to our days as counselors, and there's a ton of happy memories there. But the reality is, it's a really hard job. And if you're doing it right, you're exhausted. So you need that rest, just like you need that time off and that time to recharge. And most of us at that age are probably not great at doing it on our own without somebody telling us to.
A bit of structure to say, it's time.
Yeah,
100%. I remember one of the camps I worked at in particular, where I was a basketball instructor, and I remember the camp director saying, I trust you to look after this many other people's kids. I trust you to get the rest you need. And my philosophy on that has completely changed as I watched camp happen and all of those things. Just like, yep. And the other thing that we would often probably once or twice a summer, we would just like send the whole camp to bed. Like, you're going to bed at 9 when your campers go to bed. And everybody's getting a little sick and you can see people are a little grumpy. It's like everybody goes to bed. But I think it's kind of the same thing that you're describing is like, that's on me. Like, I'm making you go to bed, and you can be mad, but I'm going to be happier with you tomorrow.
I mean, we used to 20 years ago say to the staff, everybody take an hour off, right? And go do this and go do that.
Yeah.
And now everybody take an hour nap.
Right.
We've learned that, yet to your point, we need to make them, you take a break.
Yeah.
We need to make them sleep.
Yep.
You get older, you get wiser. These are things.
Sure. Right. Yeah, that's really great. Last question in beliefs. 17. Okay. When should a camp say no to a demand, whether it's from staff or parents, but you're saying no for the sake of culture or what your staff can accomplish?
I think a camp should say no to a demand at the point where it's hurting other people. So if Travis calls me and says, hey, Gabe, I need something, and it's only going to impact Travis, whatever. If Travis calls me and says, hey, Gabe, I need something, and it's going to negatively impact everybody in Travis's cabin, well, that's a no.
Yeah.
So I think you got to weigh who it's going to impact and how.
Yeah. And I think that those kind of questions, demands, I think they come up more often than they used to. I think it's something that happened during COVID where families like, it's my family first. And that it's impossible to pull off at camp where, one family gets something that other families don't. And I could see people, you just have to be like, I can't. There's no way that works.
There's a difference between needs and demands. And sometimes people aren't aware of that difference.
Yeah, totally right. Yep.
And I think also, to your point, some people aren't as shy as they used to be about asking for or advocating for their demands.
Yep. Yeah, for good and bad.
Correct.
I mean, there's lots of people who I'm glad that they're better at asking for. It makes camp safer that you are better at communicating what you need.
Correct.
But
and guess what? It's always okay to say no.
Yeah, totally right. Well, so those are the questions I had prepared. I wonder, this is an exercise we've done some of the times in these interviews and some of them not, but I really like it. And so what I'd like you to, I want to invite you to do is think about a time that you would go back to, a time in your life that you would go back to and just enjoy the moment. If you had to pick that moment, what do you think it would be?
I was talking about this with some friends the other day, so I'm gonna pick this mainly
Yeah.
because it was a fantastic time, and it's literally top of mind. But I would say college, because it was a wonderful time, both in terms of just the growth, in terms of the learning, right? Like for me, college was 30 some years ago. To
Yep.
be at a place where you're learning so much all the time with such speed, and to have that much accessible to you. You want to learn
Yep.
about this? Take a class. You want to learn
Yeah.
about that? Take a class, without fully appreciating it in the moment.
Yeah.
But also the social nature of college was amazing.
Mhm.
And the athletic ability that you possessed when you're 30 years younger. All
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
a fantastic time.
Yeah. Yeah. College was great for me too because I didn't like high school, but college was like, yeah, this is where this works. Well, I really appreciate your answers, Gabe. I'm going to come back with one last question in a second, but I just want to say that we're grateful that people are watching us on YouTube and or listening as you walk the dog or do your dishes. And if you're looking for more great podcasts, I'd love to recommend to you specifically today the Camp Owners podcast. Howie and Kelly run a show that is just for people who own camps and have lots of great big picture discussions on there. One of my favorite things about the Camp Owners podcast is how applicable it is to everybody who runs a camp. And a conversation I had today is I think as an industry, we need to get better at listening to people who run camps that aren't exactly like ours. You know, overnight camps need to be better at listening to day camps and what they can do, and so all over the place. So listen to the Day Camp Pod. I think it's a great show. And sorry, listen to Camp Owners. Definitely listen to Day Camp Pod. Today, listen to Camp Owners Pod. But before we go, Gabe, for you, who is one intentional camp leader that you admire, or someone that you think that we should invite to do this interview next?
So somebody that you should invite to do this next
Yeah.
is not going to be a camp director, but I'm happy to share that as well.
Yeah.
I think you should invite our shared friend Debbie. She's always got great ideas,
Yeah.
and she helps everyone with intentionality. And
Yeah.
every time we talk to her, we gain great insight. And
Yeah.
just think she's a joy to have involved in any conversation.
That's great. And I think she's a camp pro in my heart. So she fits the bill for me. But that's a great idea. Thank you for suggesting. So that's Dr. G. We'll work to get Dr. G on another show. Gabe, if people have some follow-up or want, you said something interesting that they want to follow up with you, how do they get in touch?
They can email me anytime, Gabe, Gabe, at birchtrail.com, BIRCHTRAIL.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this, Gabe. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Always great to talk with you.
Yeah. And thank you so much to those of you listening. Stay resilient, stay intentional. Take care.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.